Nola, 67, a retired nurse from Seattle. 6 years ago, after losing my husband, I moved into my son Andrew's guest house. He was my rock, my only child, and we were incredibly close. Then 3 months ago, Andrew was killed in a car accident. The pain was unbearable, but what happened at his funeral left me completely stunned. As people were paying their respects, my daughter-in-law Stephanie pulled me aside and whispered, "You have a week to get out." If you're watching this from your own family struggle, hit subscribe, because what happened next changed everything for me. My life before the tragedy was comfortable and fulfilled. I had worked as a pediatric nurse for 35 years, finding deep satisfaction in helping children heal and supporting worried parents through difficult times. My husband Robert and I had been married for 38 wonderful years, until cancer took him 6 years ago. The loss devastated me, but our son Andrew was my pillar of strength during that dark time. Andrew was my only child, and we shared a special bond that only grew stronger as he matured into adulthood. I still remember his first steps, his high school graduation, and the proud moment he received his architecture degree. When he met Stephanie in college, I welcomed her with open arms, hoping she would make my son happy. Their wedding 8 years ago was a lavish affair. Stephanie wanted everything perfect, from the custom-designed gown to the exclusive venue overlooking Puget Sound. I remember watching Andrew's face as she walked down the aisle radiating joy, and I felt grateful that my son had found someone who appeared to love him as much as I did. The birth of my grandchildren brought new light into our lives. Emma came first, now 7, with her grandfather's gentle eyes and curious nature. 2 years later, Jack arrived, now 5, a bundle of energy, with Andrew's creativity and passion. Being a grandmother was a joy I hadn't anticipated, especially after losing Robert. Andrew's career as an architect flourished. He designed their dream home himself, a beautiful modern structure with large windows overlooking a wooded area. He insisted on adding a separate guest house, saying, "Mom, this is for you whenever you're ready." After Robert passed, selling our family home made sense. The memories were too painful, and the maintenance was becoming too much for me alone. When Andrew suggested I move into the guest house permanently, it seemed like the perfect solution. In those early years, I found purpose in supporting their family. I helped with childcare while they both worked, prepared family meals several times a week, and assisted with household tasks. The children loved having me nearby, and Andrew often expressed his gratitude for my help. But underneath the surface, tensions were brewing. Stephanie began showing signs of resentment toward my presence. Small comments about my cooking or child-rearing advice, tightening her smile when I'd suggest family activities, excluding me from decisions about the children. Andrew always played peacekeeper, smoothing over awkward moments and ensuring I still felt welcome. Just 6 months before the accident, we took our last family vacation together to a beachside resort in California. One evening, while Stephanie was putting the children to bed, Andrew and I walked along the shore. The sunset painted the sky in vibrant oranges and purples as waves gently lapped at our feet. "Mom," he said, taking my hand. I want you to know that I'll always make sure you're taken care of, no matter what happens. I squeezed his hand and laughed. I'm supposed to be the one saying that to you. That's a mother's job. He smiled, but his eyes were serious. I've made some arrangements, just in case anything ever happens to me. I dismissed his concern, changing the subject to his upcoming projects. How could I have known those words would become so significant? The morning, everything changed, started like any other Tuesday. I was in my kitchen preparing breakfast for Emma and Jack, who often stayed with me before school, when both Andrew and Stephanie had early meetings. The children were giggling at the dining table as I flipped blueberry pancakes, their favorite. The phone rang at 7:38 a.m. I remember checking the clock, thinking it might be Andrew, asking me to pack specific lunches for the kids. Instead, a solemn voice identified herself as a nurse from Harborview Medical Center. There had been an accident. Andrew had been hit head-on by a drunk driver on his way to work. I needed to come immediately. My hands shook so badly I could barely hang up the phone. I turned off the stove pancake batter, still dripping from the spatula. I called Stephanie, my voice breaking, as I relayed the information. She arrived within minutes, face pale, to collect the children and drive us all to the hospital. The drive was a blur of prayers and reassurances to the confused children in the back seat. Stephanie gripped the steering wheel knuckles, white eyes fixed on the road. Neither of us spoke. The weight of possibility hung in the air between us. We arrived too late. The doctor met us in a small, windowless room, his face solemn, as he delivered the news that would shatter our world. Andrew had suffered catastrophic injuries. Despite their best efforts, he had died on the operating table 30 minutes before our arrival. The pain that ripped through me was physical, as if someone had torn out a vital organ. My knees buckled and I collapsed into a nearby chair, a primal sound escaping my throat. The children began to cry, confused and frightened by my reaction. Through my tears, I noticed Stephanie standing absolutely still, her face a mask of shock. As the initial wave of grief subsided enough for practical matters, I was surprised by Stephanie's immediate shift to logistics. While I sat holding the sobbing children, she stepped outside to make phone calls about funeral arrangements. When she returned, there was a strange distance in her eyes, as if she'd already begun separating herself from our shared grief. Over the next few days, Stephanie took complete control of the funeral planning, consulting me only minimally about my son's final arrangements. When I suggested the church where we'd celebrated his baptism and wedding, she informed me she'd already booked a modern event space Andrew had once admired. I tried to focus on comforting Emma and Jack, who crawled into my bed each night with tear-stained faces, asking questions I couldn't answer. Why did Daddy have to go to heaven? When is he coming back? Each innocent question reopened the wound of loss. Meanwhile, Stephanie's parents arrived from Chicago and were given the main guest room while other family members were directed to hotels. They whispered with Stephanie in corners, conversations that would abruptly halt when I entered the room. I caught sympathetic glances from her mother, but her father barely acknowledged my presence. As funeral preparations progressed, I noticed a distinct change in Stephanie's attitude toward me. The polite facade she had maintained during Andrew's life had begun to crack, revealing cold glances and impatient responses to my questions. When I asked about including one of Andrew's favorite songs in the service, she dismissed it as too sentimental. I found solace in Andrew's personal items, his old college sweatshirt that still smelled faintly of him, photographs from fishing trips we'd taken, the collection of Father's Day cards he'd saved in his desk drawer. Each treasure was a thread connecting me to my son, even as I felt Stephanie pulling away. The night before the funeral, I overheard Stephanie in the main house talking with her parents. Through the partially open window, her words drifted clearly. "I've already spoken with a realtor about the house situation. Once this is over, changes need to be made." Her father's response was too low to hear, but Stephanie's reply sent a chill through me. "She won't be a problem. It's my house now." I retreated to my guest house, unable to believe what I'd heard. Surely grief was making me paranoid. Stephanie couldn't possibly be planning to sell the home Andrew had built for their family for all of us. Yet, a seed of unease had been planted, one that would horrifically bloom the very next day. The day of Andrew's funeral arrived with appropriately grey skies and a light rain that seemed to mirror the tears we couldn't stop shedding. The modern event space had been transformed, with displays of photographs chronicling Andrew's life from infancy to fatherhood. I'd provided many of the childhood images, each one a knife to my heart as I helped arrange them. The polished wooden casket at the front of the room held my son, my baby, dressed in his favorite charcoal suit. His face looked peaceful, but wrong, somehow. No smile, no sparkle in his eyes, none of the vibrant energy that had always defined him. I placed my hand on the cool wood, my legs barely supporting me as I whispered a private goodbye. Throughout the service, I focused on breathing in and out, afraid that if I fully acknowledged what was happening, I would collapse entirely. Emma sat beside me, her small hand in mine, while Jack fidgeted on Stephanie's lap across the aisle, a seating arrangement she had insisted upon. When it came time for me to speak, I somehow found the strength to walk to the podium. Through tears, I shared stories of Andrew's compassion, his humor, his dedication as a son and father. I spoke of his childhood dreams and how he'd achieved them through hard work and determination. I wanted everyone to know the full measure of the man we had lost, not just the architect or husband or father, but the person who had been my greatest joy for 36 years. Stephanie's eulogy came next, oddly formal and composed. She spoke of Andrew's professional accomplishments, his vision for their future, his role in the community. Her voice never broke, her eyes remained dry. Several times, I noticed her looking at her parents rather than at the casket or the assembled mourners. It felt as if she were performing grief rather than experiencing it. The reception afterward was held at their home, our home. People filled the rooms sharing stories and bringing food that would largely go uneaten. I moved through the crowd in a fog, accepting hugs and condolences, struggling to find appropriate responses. The children stayed close to me, uncomfortable with the somber adults and formal atmosphere. It happened during a brief lull. I had stepped into the kitchen for a moment alone when Stephanie appeared in the doorway. She closed the door behind her, cutting off the murmur of conversation from the living room. Her face was set in lines I'd never seen before, hard and determined. "I need to speak with you," she said, her voice low and controlled. She glanced around to ensure we were alone. I nodded, assuming she wanted to discuss some detail about the children's schedule or the remaining funeral guests. She stepped closer, her eyes cold. "You have a week to get out. I'm selling the house." The words didn't register at first. They seemed so out of place, so impossible in the context of this day of all days. "What?" I managed to whisper. "You heard me. I'm selling the house, and I need you gone by next weekend. Andrew's gone now. I don't need to pretend anymore." The cruelty of her timing and her words left me speechless. As mourners gathered in the next room, as my son lay newly buried, she was evicting me from my home. I couldn't respond, couldn't process. I simply turned and walked out the back door to the guest house, my sanctuary for the past 6 years. Once inside, I collapsed on the sofa, my body shaking with silent sobs. The dual pain of grief and betrayal was almost unbearable. I spent that night staring at the ceiling, contemplating my uncertain future. At 67, with only my nurse's pension and modest savings, finding a new home would be challenging. All my friends were in this community, and more importantly, my grandchildren were here. The thought of being separated from them after losing Andrew was unimaginable. The next morning, Emma found me still on the sofa, eyes red from crying and lack of sleep. She climbed up beside me, her small face serious. "Mommy said you might be moving away," she said, her voice small. "Why do you have to go, Grandma? Don't you love us anymore?" Her innocent question broke my heart all over again. How could I explain adult cruelty to a child who had just lost her father? The next day, I forced myself to begin the painful process of packing. Each item I wrapped reminded me of the life I had built here, the memories created within these walls. I started with books and decorative items unable yet to face clothing, and more personal belongings. While searching for photo albums in the closet, I discovered a metal box labeled "Important Documents" in Andrew's precise handwriting. I had seen him store papers there, but had never had reason to look inside. Now, with uncertainty looming, I thought there might be family photos or mementos I could save for Emma and Jack. I sat cross-legged on the floor, the box heavy in my lap. Opening it felt like an invasion of privacy, even though Andrew was gone. But something compelled me to look through the contents, perhaps a need for connection to my son in any way possible. Inside were the expected items: birth certificates, insurance policies, vaccination records for the children. But beneath them was a folder labeled "Family Provisions" that caught my attention. With trembling hands, I opened it to find legal documents regarding the property. My eyes widened as I read through the papers. According to these documents, Andrew had put the property in both his name and mine. We were joint owners with right of survivorship. If these papers were legitimate, the house legally belonged to me, now not Stephanie. Tucked behind the property deed was a sealed envelope with my name written on it. Inside was a letter from Andrew, dated just 3 months earlier. "Dear Mom," it began. "If you're reading this, something has happened to me. I hope you never need to open this letter, but I've learned in my work that planning for the worst, while hoping for the best, is the wisest course." Tears blurred my vision as I continued reading. "I've made arrangements to ensure you will always have a home with Emma and Jack. The property is in both our names, which means it passes directly to you if anything happens to me. I haven't told Stephanie about this arrangement. She tends to worry about financial matters, and I didn't want to create unnecessary tension. But I need to know you'll be secure, that you'll be there for my children if I can't be." The letter continued with practical details about insurance policies and accounts where half the proceeds were designated for me, half for Stephanie and the children. Andrew had thought of everything protecting all of us in his absence. I remembered now the conversation on the beach during our vacation, his mention of arrangements that I had dismissed. My practical, thoughtful son had been preparing just in case. The discovery left me with conflicting emotions: relief that I wouldn't be homeless, guilt about that very relief, and anxiety about how to proceed. The last thing I wanted was conflict with Stephanie, especially now. But Andrew had clearly intended for me to stay to help raise his children. I called Thomas, a family friend and attorney who had known Andrew since childhood. He agreed to review the documents immediately, coming to the guest house that afternoon while Stephanie was out with the children. Thomas confirmed what I had discovered. "These papers are in perfect order, Nola. The property is legally yours now, not Stephanie's. She has no right to sell it or evict you." "What should I do?" I asked, torn between asserting my rights and avoiding additional trauma for everyone. "Be direct but gentle," he advised. "Show her the documents explain Andrew's wishes. Offer to work together to honor what he wanted for his family." I spent that evening rehearsing what to say, dreading the confrontation, but knowing it was necessary. Andrew had protected me. Now I needed to stand up for his final wishes. The next morning, Stephanie arrived at my door with empty boxes tucked under her arm. Her expression was impatient, her manner brusque as she set them down on my kitchen table. "I brought these for your things," she said without preamble. "The realtor is coming tomorrow to take listing photos, so I need the main spaces cleared." I took a deep breath, steadying myself. "Stephanie, we need to talk about the house." She sighed irritably. "There's nothing to discuss. I've made my decision." "Before you move forward with any plans," I said carefully, "there's something you should know." I retrieved the folder with the property documents and Andrew's letter, placing them on the table between us. Andrew made arrangements for the house. I didn't know until yesterday. Stephanie's eyes narrowed as she picked up the papers. I watched her expression change from dismissive to confused to incredulous as she read through them. "This is impossible," she said, voice rising. "These must be fake. Andrew would never do this behind my back." "They're real," I said quietly. "Thomas reviewed them yesterday. The house was put in both our names. It passes to me now." "You manipulated him into this," she accused, face flushing with anger. You've been controlling him his entire life, and now you're trying to steal my home. That's not true, I protested. I had no idea about any of this until I found these documents yesterday. Stephanie pulled out her phone, dialing furiously. We'll see what my attorney has to say about this, she snapped, walking to the window as her call connected. I sat silently listening to her explain the situation in increasingly agitated tones. Her face fell as she apparently received confirmation of what I had told her. When she ended the call, she turned to me with naked hostility. So, this is your plan? To take everything, to push me and my children out of our own home? That's not what I want at all, I began, but she cut me off. Don't pretend you care about us, she hissed. You've always been jealous of my relationship with Andrew, always inserting yourself, always making him feel guilty if he didn't put you first. Her accusations stunned me. Was this really how she had seen our relationship all these years? All those family dinners, the vacations where you had to be included, your constant advice and opinions. She continued, years of resentment pouring out. He could never say no to you, and you knew it. You used his guilt to get exactly what you wanted, a free place to live and unlimited access to our family. That's not fair, I said, fighting to keep my voice steady. I loved Andrew just as I love Emma and Jack. Everything I've done has been to support your family. Our family, she emphasized, not yours. You were tolerated because Andrew insisted. But he's gone now, and I don't have to pretend anymore. Her cruel words echoed what she had said at the funeral, confirming the years of hidden animosity. Before I could respond, the front door opened, and Emma ran in, followed more slowly by Jack. They had been playing in the yard and had obviously heard raised voices. Why are you fighting? Emma asked, eyes wide with concern. Stephanie immediately softened her tone. We're just having an adult discussion, honey. Why don't you and Jack go back outside for a few more minutes? But Jack had already spotted the boxes. Are you going away, Grandma? He asked, lower lip trembling. No one is going anywhere right now, I assured him, kneeling to his level. Everything's okay. Stephanie shot me a venomous look before taking both children by the hand. Come on, let's get lunch started. Grandma needs some time alone. After they left, I sank onto the sofa, emotionally exhausted. The depth of Stephanie's dislike shocked me. Had she really been pretending all these years? Had I been so blind to her resentment? Or had grief twisted her memories, making her see our past through a darker lens? Later that afternoon, Stephanie drove away with the children, saying they were going to her parents' hotel. She didn't return until the following day, by which time I had regained my composure and resolved to stand my ground firmly, but compassionately. When she arrived home, she had a real estate agent with her. I met them in the driveway, calmly informing the agent that the property was not for sale and providing Thomas's contact information for verification. Stephanie's face was a mask of fury as the confused agent departed, but she said nothing, simply slamming the door of the main house behind her. The following week was a cold war. Stephanie refused to speak to me directly, using the children as reluctant messengers when absolutely necessary. Mom says dinner is at 6 if you want to come. Emma would report clearly uncomfortable with her role. I maintained my routine with the children as much as possible, trying to provide stability amidst the tension. Stephanie began restricting my time with Emma and Jack, scheduling activities during hours I usually spent with them, claiming they needed normalcy away from the guest house. When I asked about taking them to the park as we had planned, she informed me they had already made other plans. Thomas called to report that Stephanie's attorney had contacted him acknowledging my legal ownership, but suggesting a reasonable settlement to transfer the property to Stephanie. The offer was substantial, a lump sum that would allow me to purchase a comfortable condo nearby. I spent a sleepless night weighing my options. The money would provide security, but it would mean leaving the home Andrew had intended for me, potentially limiting my role in my grandchildren's lives. I imagined how heartbroken Andrew would be to see his family torn apart by property disputes so soon after his death. The next morning, I asked Thomas to arrange a meeting with Stephanie and both attorneys. Instead of accepting her offer, I presented a counter-proposal. I would retain ownership of the guest house and a small portion of the property, while Stephanie would have exclusive rights to the main house. Neither of us would sell without the other's agreement. This isn't about money or property, I explained, as Stephanie sat stone-faced across the conference table. It's about honoring Andrew's wishes and keeping this family together for Emma and Jack's sake. Stephanie's attorney advised her to consider the offer, noting that litigation would be costly and potentially traumatic for the children. Stephanie left without answering her silence, continuing for several more days. Meanwhile, I noticed concerning changes in Emma and Jack. Emma had become unusually quiet, while Jack had started having tantrums, something he rarely did before. During my limited time with them, they asked questions that broke my heart. "Why does Mommy hate Grandma now?" Emma asked one afternoon. "Is it because Daddy died?" I suggested to Stephanie that we consult a family therapist to help the children process both their father's death and the current tension. To my surprise, she agreed, perhaps recognizing the toll the situation was taking on Emma and Jack. Dr. Langston, a kind woman with decades of experience helping families through grief, met with each of us separately before bringing us together. In our joint session, she was direct. "The children are experiencing secondary trauma from the conflict between you two," she explained. "They've lost their father, and now they fear losing the stability of their family structure. They need both of you to work together." She turned to Stephanie. "Your anger is an understandable part of your grief process, but allowing it to damage your children's relationship with their grandmother will have long-lasting consequences." To me, she said, "Your desire to stay connected is natural, but you must be sensitive to Stephanie's need to establish her independent household." She recommended accepting my proposed property division with clear boundaries and shared commitment to the children's well-being. After several more sessions, Stephanie reluctantly agreed. The legal documents were drawn up, creating a formal arrangement that gave us both security and independence. The signing meeting was uncomfortable but civil. As we left the attorney's office, Stephanie spoke directly to me for the first time in weeks. "I'm doing this for Emma and Jack," she said, "not for you." "I understand," I replied. "That's all I want, too, for them to be happy and secure." That evening, I prepared a simple dinner of the children's favorite foods, spaghetti and meatballs with garlic bread, and invited them and Stephanie to eat in my newly defined space. The meal was quiet, but without the previous tension. When Jack spontaneously ran to hug me after dinner, I saw something soften momentarily in Stephanie's expression. A small breakthrough came the following weekend, when Stephanie allowed the children to stay overnight with me while she attended a friend's wedding. It was the first time since Andrew's death that I had them to myself for an extended period. We baked cookies, built a fort in the living room, and looked through photo albums of their father as a child. When Stephanie picked them up, both children were eager to tell her about our adventures. Inwardly, I still struggled with resentment over Stephanie's cruelty and the knowledge that she had merely tolerated me for years. But watching Emma and Jack begin to smile again, seeing them move between our homes with increasing ease, I knew that choosing peace over principle had been right. Andrew would have wanted his children surrounded by love, not legal battles. 6 months after Andrew's death, we had established a new normal. My guest house had been officially converted into a small but comfortable independent home with separate utilities and a private entrance. I had repainted, rearranged furniture, and made the space truly my own for the first time. The children now had a predictable schedule for spending time with me 3 afternoons a week after school, Sunday brunches, and occasional overnights. These boundaries actually improved our relationship, as both Stephanie and I knew what to expect and could plan accordingly. Our interactions remained mostly pragmatic, centered on the children's needs and schedules, but the open hostility had subsided. One afternoon, as Stephanie came to collect Emma and Jack, she paused in my kitchen. "I've been thinking about what happened after the funeral," she said awkwardly. "I was not in a good place. Grief does strange things to people. It wasn't exactly an apology, but it was an acknowledgement." "Yes, does," I agreed, not pushing for more. She nodded, then added, "Andrew would be glad that you're still here for them. He always wanted that." Those words meant more to me than she could know. A recognition, however small, of Andrew's wishes and my place in his children's lives. Finding purpose beyond grandparenting became important for my healing. I joined a grief support group for widows and widowers, people who understood the double burden of losing both a spouse and a child. Through them, I developed new friendships, particularly with Dorothy, a retired art teacher who had lost her daughter to cancer. Dorothy encouraged me to pursue a long-neglected interest in painting. I converted a corner of my living room into a small art studio, finding unexpected solace in watercolors. Emma and Jack loved watching me paint, often asking for small pictures of animals or landscapes for their rooms. Jack even joined me sometimes, his childish brushstrokes bringing fresh joy to my quiet afternoons. I also began volunteering 2 mornings a week at the children's hospital where I had once worked. Reading to sick children and supporting anxious parents gave me a renewed sense of purpose and perspective. Many of these families were facing challenges that made my own situation seem manageable in comparison. When the 1-year anniversary of Andrew's death approached, I suggested to Stephanie that we plan a small remembrance ceremony. To my surprise, she not only agreed, but asked for my input on meaningful ways to honor his memory. We planted a cherry tree in the backyard between our homes, with Emma and Jack helping to shovel the soil. As we stood watching the children place flowers around the small tree, Stephanie briefly touched my arm. "He would like this," she said, her voice catching. For a moment, our shared grief connected us more powerfully than anything else could have, the love we both had for the man we had lost. Looking back now, I marvel at how different things turned out from what I feared that terrible day at the funeral. When Stephanie whispered those cruel words, I thought I would lose everything: my home, my place in my grandchildren's lives, my last connections to Andrew. Instead, I found strength I didn't know I possessed. I'm deeply grateful for Andrew's foresight in protecting my place in his family, but I'm equally thankful for the hard-won wisdom that came from standing up for myself while seeking reconciliation rather than victory. Andrew would have been proud of that balance most of all. Grief doesn't end, but neither does love. The table turns in unexpected ways when we honor both. Sometimes the worst circumstances reveal our greatest capacities for resilience and grace. If you're facing family conflict after a loss, remember that healing isn't linear and relationships can evolve in surprising ways. The path forward might not be what you imagined, but it can still lead to peace. What family challenges have you overcome after losing a loved one? Share your story in the comments below. And if this story helped you feel less alone, please subscribe to hear more stories of finding strength through difficult times. Life may have sharp edges, but we're all navigating them together. Thank you for listening, and may you find both courage and compassion on your journey.